ever. Like when you were
Uh,
saying you were recording, then we were recording and I was talking because we were recording. Otherwise, we don't talk. Like, are we recording now?
we are recording now.
When did we actually is this the first time you've been recording?
No,
What what about
as of today, yes.
when you said we were recording, we weren't recording? This is kind of important. So you're a fuck up, and all the conversation we were having about clarifying how any of this works is not actually recording. So it didn't happen in the real world. So we're starting 8 minutes late
Yes.
as a start, right? Okay. Why don't I start from scratch so that this can actually be recorded? So right now, fucking. Uh, why even bother? So fuck, man, that pisses me off to no end. You have no idea. Okay. So I was talking about sharing screens, and I guess that doesn't matter anymore. I was talking about delegation of responsibilities, and you're going to have to get all the data from previous recordings to me, and I'll go through, I'll audit it all, and possibly clip stuff out. And then I don't know whether or not we'll want to publish any of that. So it does sound like you're going to need to set up a YouTube account, and we can upload the backlogs of the. I think this will be number 5, I believe.
3. No, this will be 4.
This is the 4th. Okay.
I believe it's 4. Yeah, we had 3 recordings on the laptop, and then there was yesterday. And then there's yeah, this one. Then that'll make it 4, 4 or 5. I'm pretty sure it's 4, but it might be 5,
you have you have a directory
which is not
within which.
stored on this computer.
Okay, so we're gonna have to fix that as well. Yeah, so yeah, migrating everything from that computer to this one. Okay, so we have no topics to actually talk about. Um,
Or do you want to set up where or do you have the no, you said you got rid of the Raspberry Pi, didn't you?
yeah, because it's trash.
So you said you wanted to do you said you want to at one point do a torrent or a server box or a torrent box?
Yeah, I was gonna set up. I mean, I'm waiting either on my new device to exist to come out of the prototyping phase, or buy a new laptop. And I was looking at the new laptop, but I don't think it's being sold anymore. I have to look a little bit harder. I mean, I really hope it's still being sold because it's the last model that they have that has the keyboard layout I want. The problem is it's not inexpensive. But it's one of these, like, it would be the last laptop I buy, and then unless it gets worn out or whatever the heck. So, 5, 10 years or whatever it'll be worth, and since I'll be putting Linux on it, it only gets better. I mean,
Just
I say that, but it's not true.
I'm sorry, I need to check one thing before we go and possibly record like forever footage and turns out it's for nothing.
I'm confused. You're concluding the test and listening to it?
Yes.
Okay.
I touched no settings from yesterday, but I just want to be sure, just in case if we're recording for nothing, just to be recording.
So you resumed recording?
I stopped and started a new one.
So
Cause
there is now an additional recording.
yes,
Okay,
with like a
so
2 second, with like a few seconds of interrupt dead
So
space.
yeah. Okay, so those 2 audio files will be in the same folder for processing.
Yes.
Okay, so, now that I can't remember,
Isn't cotton very helpful though?
cotton, well, I mean,
Like
cotton
something
is one
about
of the
yeast
core.
infections.
Sorry, say again?
Something about preventing yeast infection or reducing the amount of yeast infections.
What? I'm talking about clothing, really.
Yeah, and I'm
I don't know
talking about cotton and yeast infection, or is it the other way around?
what I I mean, if you're talking about women's, what the heck is it called? Women's sanitary napkins? Oh, I
Mm,
can turn my camera off, I suppose. Stop streaming black. So checklists should probably include updating Discord. So make a note for that. And checklist and your to-do list can probably can
Yeah, cotton.
probably include.
Yeah, cotton and silk underwear absorb moisture, keeping you dry.
Okay, so no silk. You like silk lining.
Mm.
So silk with a cotton lining. There we go. Um, yeah. What? Where did you get that? It's your fault.
I
That
was
derailing
bored
your
and
fault.
ran.
Is actually one of the world's most water wasteful things that humans.
Huh.
It's cotton and rice and soy. The result is not. Uh, let's say it's not potable. The water is not potable after being used in these endeavors. So I always keep in mind whenever you're hearing. I know it's a meme to say that vegans are all uppity about food and stuff like that. And it comes with the ideology. However, it is overplayed. The pushback against veganism is overplayed. However, I always keep in mind whenever I'm hearing like a vegetarian or so vegetarianism is the food, veganism is an overarching philosophy that just happens to have vegetarianism in it. Lots of things are vegetarian without being vegan. So vegan includes things like not wearing leather belts and shoes and all kinds of other byproducts in your life. It's not a diet thing. But whenever I'm hearing something about vegetarianism, I always keep in mind that like they eat a lot of rice and soy products, like a lot. So they well, I don't eat meat. It's for whatever reason, and like okay, well, you don't veganism says you be vegetarian because you care about the world and you care about animals. Animals is a specific argument. But if their argument is I'm a vegetarian because I care about the world, it's like no, you don't because you don't understand about water wastage. And so if you've got water wastage based on you're eating a shit ton of rice and soy related products, then so instead of see, a lot of people have this constrained, this narrow vision of how things are in the world. They only care about like vegans care about things when they have brown eyes, and that's it. And then as soon as it doesn't have eyes anymore, they don't care so much. They don't care about what plants. They don't care about where they're grown. They don't care about how those they don't care about pesticides, water use. They might not even care that there's essentially slave labor actually managing that. They wouldn't care about the land laws. They wouldn't like, hey, if you're buying wheat from these guys, did you know that those farmers are not legally allowed to keep the seed from their own crops in order to reseed themselves? They're required by law to purchase seeds from some third party company, which happened to be involved in bribing the politicians to pass that law in the first place. Like, so people have these philosophies that are narrow, and and whenever somebody brings up their holier than thou philosophy, I just have to take a step back and look at the rest of the world that they're ignoring, that they're basically choosing to head in the sand thing, and it's especially true with like movements, with people's social endeavors, with oh, we need to think of this. It's just like, and the rest of the world means nothing. Like, so it's a very strange fixation that people ideologically have when they have blinders. Do you know what the term blinders mean?
You don't know one thing, notice the other.
Well, it comes from back in the days when we used horses. Blinders are these.
Yeah. Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know
I get
what
it
they were.
now.
Yeah, yeah, and so they go on the side of the horse's head to narrow the field of view so
Well, it's
that they're
just
not.
it's paying attention to what's in front of you rather than everything else on your peripheral vision.
That's how we're using it. And for horses, it was to make sure they didn't get spooked by other traffic running past. And so for humans, and we also have the burying your head in the sand, which is taken from ostriches, even though they don't do.
They don't?
As far as I know, ostriches do not do that.
You cut out the end of when you said they don't.
So, as far as I know, ostriches do not do that. I'm not certain though.
If only we could find
Um,
out.
yeah, if only we had some sort of internet thing,
I
some
don't even know
sort
how to
of
spell it.
ostrich. You don't have to
Yes.
spell anything anymore. Just tell Google
Do ostrich
phonetic.
Okay, Google searches. Do ostriches fly, travel in herd, bury their heads, have hollow bones, have teeth, have wings, live in the desert, have three
All
stomachs? What?
isn't that cows? They have all things that have bones have hollow bones. That's the purpose of bones.
So I've been telling my friend who says he can't sleep during the daytime to do what ostriches do. Oh god. Okay, so the response is that if they know they're if they know there's danger and they can't get away, they play dead. And their head and neck are flat on the ground, and their grounds are lightly colored so it looks like it blends in with the color of the soil.
There you go. And did you know that lemmings don't hurl themselves off of cliffs? That's that's fake news. That's that
Goddamn
was a
robot chicken.
National Geographic actually did a I think it was them, did a documentary where they weren't particularly interesting and they actually started picking them up and hurling them off and filming that.
That's
I
great.
I think that either started or propagated this myth. So we use that to describe, you know, certain we use that to describe. I mean, that's not inaccurate. It's the old, if such and such, if your friends all jumped off a bridge, it's like, yeah, yeah. I think most people, yeah. Otherwise, what? You have no friends.
Uh,
I mean, if everybody else is doing it, it must be safe.
uh,
All the other lemmings are jumping.
okay.
Yeah, and there's a whole lot of pursuit like that where people have crowd mentalities. Herd mentality is a big part of what it is to be. And I'm it's part of my core toolkit to understand people. It's the idea of intellectual frugality. Have I talked to you with that phrase?
Nope. What?
So intellectual frugality is noting that a person only has enough steam to tackle the things that they're interested in. So they only have enough time, they only have enough interest, specialty, resources to do anything about certain things because they're uh, mortal and they have constraints in time and space and all this kind of stuff. So if you were to, in any crowd, bring up anything, odds are really good that the majority of people won't know anything, won't be able to do anything, will be ineffective, whatever. People forget that the odds are also good that somebody in there will have significant expertise with any of these things. But the problem is when we examine crowds, the stupidity gets amplified. And so intellectual frugality is, you might interpret it like laziness or stupidity, which isn't accurate, which is why I like using a more technical term. And it's not a nicer term. It is just a better term to use, a more thorough, more exact term. And intellectual frugality is like I think I've pretty well explained it, and there's probably some technical descriptions, dictionary descriptions, etc. for it. But the idea of a person going along with you, if you want, you can call it a trend. Yeah, so like a crowd trend. The idea with any individual just acting like everybody else without thinking about it is not because they're dumb and not because they're sheep. That they could be those things, but it's not because they're those things necessarily. It's that all humans have this intellectual frugality where we only have so many fucks to give. So there are a lot of things that everybody else, and we might care about all of our friends and just not understand the topic and go along with it. Everybody else is voting purple. I'll go purple, and just that's what they do, and they don't examine what's going on. So they don't, for example, well, uh, GMO is a great stuff. So back to the vegetarianism, veganism stuff. There's often associated ideologies with food, and one of them is GMO. So GMO is genetically modified organism, and that is a test tube lab modification of the genetics for, in this case, is for food. And humans have been doing this for thousands of years. That's why we have weird things like oranges that are orange, or bananas, or potatoes, or pigeons and cats and dogs and horses and cows and pigs and sheep, and the list goes on. We've been modifying those foods, and we just used to do it the random, challenging ways. So, for example, in Canada, um, we had a nightmare in Canada called wheat rust. And what wheat rust was is a disease that affected a certain variety of wheat, and it would spoil it for human consumption. And it just swept across all crops across most of Canada and just destroyed them. And there was a resulting, more or less, a famine, because most countries will rely on a handful of staples, and Canada is an extremely high wheat producing country in general. We export wheat. So our central areas, well, we do a lot of wheat. The United States used to, and I think they now do corn because they got government subsidies that never went away because of their Great Depression, and that's why they have like high fructose corn syrup and everything, because corn is subsidized for no reason. So that's why a lot of people are dying, because of leftover subsidies. Anyhow, Canada, the wheat rust was specific to a variety, and Canada learned to both breed and keep multiple varieties of wheat so that we don't have one kind in the entire country. We've got many kinds. And we have seed banks of all of the different previous generations that we've tried. So if there's another kind of wheat rust that pops up, or the same one, it might be absolutely devastating, but only to one or a couple of varieties of that. So genetic modification in our terms is something that began with our breeding out and keeping varieties of stuff, and then just being selective. And GMO is being extremely focused and splicing in genetics with the general knowledge that you will get a certain result, and just so pushing and pushing and pushing and in only X number of cycles of manipulation, producing a thing that's quite different. Um, and a lot of people are saying, "Oh, science is bad. We shouldn't do that because it's unnatural." It's like, well, no, no, it's not. I mean, okay, well, I guess it's unnatural that humans perform natural selection against stuff, and we'll we'll say breed cows, and the cow that bites someone, we won't let that one breed, and we'll probably kill it on the spot and eat it. And the next generation of cow, if that cow bites someone or it's aggressive, that one doesn't get to breed. And we've been doing that for so many years. The cows are now, I've got like meme pictures of cows like licking cats and being friendly with dogs and stuff. In the wild, there's no way that those creatures would be as docile as we have made them. Humans have been humans have been engineering animals since forever. We're not just top of the food chain. We actually manufacture a food chain for us. And that's not even contemporary. That's 10,000 years ago. We've been doing this for a long time. Just look at dogs. I mean, look at God.
Dogs
We
and
have dogs
cats,
now.
any household pets essentially,
Oh,
or
and
common
that's
household
the thing.
pets, I should say.
Well, now we've got like foxes are being pets. I saw It's the most weird thing. Okay, I saw more than one occasion, and you can look this stuff up. People at least handling baby platypuses. Now, do you know much about platypi?
Aren't
Platypuses?
they
What they're called?
aren't they just weird ass species that can do a bunch of things?
They're like a leftover chimera weird animal. They're just
Yeah.
they're just strange. So they're mammals, but they have bills like a duck, and they live in water, and they lay eggs even though they're a mammal. And they're poisonous like a
Yeah.
snake. And they're not just poisonous. They're one of the most dangerous poisonous things. So this dude with like petting a bunch of little baby platypuses, and they're like like only humans, only humans would do this kind of crap. I mean, one way is to look at the Japanese. Have you ever seen the Japanese and their dogs or cats? Not the way they engineer their pets, but just the way their pets act. Have you seen that stuff?
How, their pets what?
How their pets act? They're, if you see any videos of pets being extraordinarily human in the way they act, um, don't be shocked if it's Japanese. If it's
Oh, how
raised,
the monkey was a butler. And there's a
I
chimpanzee where it's a waiter and he gets tipped in
um,
paid in peanuts.
I mean, that has existed. I know that was in early America where they had that sort of stuff. But that's circus. I mean, in terms of house pets, um, I know that in the Persian area they had the little monkeys. There has been a pet-like bond between people and those for a long time. And I don't quite think that exists anywhere else. You have reverence to certain kind of monkeys in places in India, for example. And there are other places where they're just kind of not they're wild-ish, but they live around people, but they're not like pets or anything. Um, in Japan, they might train dogs to play like guessing games or cats to do puzzles or just the weirdest stuff. So that is
Or this one guy
that's a
who I've been told where he arm wrestled his cat when he was younger.
wrestles a cat, like a house cat.
Yeah, I'm guessing.
I mean, I've got video of people with lions and cheetahs and the cheetahs and stuff. Like they're big cats, and they're just nuzzling up against their human, and they're all adorable and all very very pet like. And these are incredibly dangerous. Just a little misunderstanding will get you killed.
Well, one person. Well, I've seen houses where they have a pig as a pet or they have a wolf as a pet.
Wolves. So pig is actually really common.
Not
In
really.
terms of having it as a pet, we've got little pets, but I've seen big pets. And common in terms of it being like a pretty casual. It's not an extraordinary pet to have, even if it's wolf is dangerous, like real dangerous. But wolves have rules, and if you know the rules real well, and if you raise the wolf since it was little, then it will follow those rules. However, those rules are pretty harsh, and random friends that drop by might not know all the rules, and that can be a really serious problem because there's not necessarily forgiveness for uh for something that hasn't been bred and rebred down into being friendly. And like I said, like with cows, like with cattle, we've got there is the there is the biological proof that breeding can change personality. And that's how humans have manufactured all of our livestock and pets is we bred them into having personalities. We used to have dogs that were purpose built, purpose bred, that like a Yorkshire Terrier. The Yorkshire Terrier's shtick was it was small, and they're aggressive little bastards, and they would actually chase rabbits down into the holes, and they could into their burrows, and would go after them and pull and haul the carcass out, and all kinds of other dogs for fox hunting or bird hunting or whatever the heck, right? But generally speaking, now they're just bred down into toys that are pretty in different ways, and their personalities are such that uh, they are not like what they might have been in nature. And it's not because you haven't let it out and live in the wild, grow up in the wild, because we've seen that happen, and they're just not functional. You can't you can't take a bunch of baby cattle, like baby cows, set up a herd, give them a reasonable space to live in, and have them grow up into like wild, self-sustaining animals. Like ignoring the fact that they're not physically right. They do not suddenly develop a personality that makes them capable of surviving anything different than what we've bred them for. And a lot of animals are like that. The notable exception is because uh
You cut out on no. You cut out as soon as you said notable exception is.
yeah, so it sounds like Discord's not going to be appropriate for talking since
I
I
don't think
mean maybe if I turn off push to talk
it's.
and I can try that.
I think you should. Or wait, you have push to talk on?
Correct.
Leave it continuous and
Check.
either back up just a little bit from your mic.
Oh, okay. So it's on voice activity. And maybe that would be better, but now you're going to hear like my chair squeak, stuff like that.
Oh
The
no, what is it?
authenticity. But I suppose I can hear. I can move my microphone so it's more in front of my face, and maybe that would matter. And I can fiddle with mic sensitivity and stuff.
It'll do it automatically if you haven't touched the settings.
Um, I probably have, but the settings are good. I've had other people say that they're good.
Okay.
Okay, so I was talking about cats being an exception to the idea of them being out in the wild, and dogs to some limited degree are, because there are places where there are. So people have indoor outdoor cats, and they go outdoors and they go mousing and they go birding, I guess it would be, and they'll
Birding.
kill them, and cats kill half their stuff just for fun, and maybe they'll eat some of it and they bring some of it home because their human really sucks at hunting, so they want to like bring home some game for their because they care. Even though it's kind of horrifying for people to get to like they'll sleep with their bedroom door closed at night, and their cat will go outside and come back in and will actually push dead mice under the door.
That's great.
Like, here, I got you something. And the cat will be like outside the door looking all proud while the owner's horrified at having stepped on a dead mouse. It's the best. And dogs are much the same in that there are a lot of dogs who they form this mixed breed pack, and they'll roam the streets, and they actually do get wild and dangerous. One I know a guy from um oh, where's my brain? He's Eastern European. Um and I know the country is gonna pop into my head. I can't remember. I don't know why I wouldn't remember it. Mm,
Spain.
he used to have yeah, I can actually look this up. Okay, so here we go. Romania is where he's from. And the reason I can remember that is because I remember the name of the Soviet era dictator. How obscure is that that I can look up
Things
that
to be
guy's name?
proud of.
Yes. Yes. Anyhow, this guy in Romania is talking about wild dogs that exist in some places still, and it's a big, big problem because they're dangerous. So dogs can kind of revert back into something, but it's more like they go back to being pack animals, which I mean, normally they would just be pack animals friendly to humans in general, and certainly friendly to the people that raise them and feed them and stuff. But out in the wild, when they're just out in the wild, they kind of hang out around cities and then go through garbage and all. I'm really not sure how a lot of these creatures could stay alive while in a human dominated region because we don't tend to have like where we live. It's just a desert for anything except what we want there. We tend to not have any leftover anything. Like birds are only around because we can't get rid of them. We wouldn't capture them to have them as pets or eat them or anything. So they're just kind of allowed to live. We happen to have trees because that's about this is about as much as we do. Maybe some places have parks, kinda, but it's not like front lawns have anything edible for wild creatures, really. Backyards, not really. Some people plant. Some people are really nice and they'll plant flowers for bees and stuff like that, or butterflies, or sometimes for hummingbirds and stuff like that. But it's not like dogs have anything to eat. So I don't know how it works that you'd have roaming packs of wild dogs. Well, wild former house pet dogs. I don't know how that would actually happen. Um, yeah, anyhow. Um, but I do want to talk about plants some more and finish off that with plants because a lot of people talk about GMOs, and this wild train wreck was from GMOs. And GMOs, genetically modified organisms, and a lot of people have this limited philosophy and they don't understand it and they don't understand the scope very well and they don't try to map it over to other things. So they think about genetically modified plants and they don't know about how humans have been modifying plants and everything and animals for our purposes for as long as we've come into contact with these things. And GMOs are a very direct, efficient way of doing it. And so they'll say, "Well, I'm not going to buy GMOs because GMOs are bad." And that I mean, all things can be bad, so you can't say that GMOs can't be bad. But in general, they're not made to be bad. That's what the reason that genetically modified, let's say, food exists at all is because that's a better way of breeding of somehow creating a more optimal let's call it a more profitable product because technically speaking we're still talking about a free market more or less. When you have government subsidies, kind of mucks things up, and when you can't quite have competition, it mucks things up, and when there are laws in the way, it mucks things up, and etc. But so you end up with these products that are more profitable, and generally speaking what that means for plants is that they require less other things that require money. So a GMO, the two things that they are bred for, uh, well, kind of three. One is drought resistance, and you might say general like environmental hardiness. So it might be heat resistance as well, depending on what kind of plants we're talking about. And the other is pest resistance. The one is so that it can require less water because water is expensive, and the other is so it requires less pesticides. As it turns out, both of those are really great things to support. So you should not buy GMOs. You want to buy plants that have been modified so that require less water, require less waste, less infrastructure to to take water from nature and pour it into this one purpose. And you absolutely want to reduce the amount of pesticides necessary. You want the plants to have natural defenses, or you want the plants to be more hardy, or you want so a lot of people like I was talking about veganism or vegetarianism that has philosophies for their food. Like the philosophy is completely incomplete because these are the same sorts of people that will not understand their choice of food and will make really weird like I am so woke, I buy green. All my stuff is organic. I don't do GMOs. And it's like they don't know what any of that means, what it actually means. So for example, I'll give you an additional example because I think in terms of extreme long terms. Um people talk about so veganism. I don't I don't disrespect veganism other than thinking that it's very limited in scope. Um, and I don't disrespect the amount of thinking that goes into developing an ideology that cares. I think that's important. I just think it's too small for me to even care about. Like it's it just deals with animals, which is so incomplete to me that I don't even try. I don't even try. So say veganism says something like, we shouldn't use leather. That's a really common one when people start talking about products aside from food. Is to say, well, you shouldn't use leather. Shouldn't use leather for your boots, your belts, your pants, your jackets, whatever. And these are the when you choose to do that, when you choose to stray from certain kinds of products into certain other kinds of products, like you still need pants and you still need shoes. Unfortunately, we still need belts because we don't sell pants sizes and pants, shrink in the wash and stuff like that. So belts are still going to be a thing. So you make it out of something else. And there's this concept. Um, we have the reduce, reuse, recycle concept, the three R's. This is Canada. So this concept is a little different in different places, but the idea of understanding the products we use in terms of this life cycle. So you take a thing, you try to get it used or you try to get it whatever. There's more than that. So reduce, reuse, recycle. So you use less of it if you can, if you choose to. You be a little frugal. Um, you reuse the thing for a different purpose. Try to get more out of it, more use out of it. Maybe you buy use, and you recycle. So you you take your glass or your plastic and you try to make another use out of it, grind it up, try to get it melted down, turned into another product. And these are partial and all this kind of stuff. So it's not perfect. Um, but there's more than that. There's repair. There's a lot of products that could be repaired, but are designed with planned obsolescence or are hard to repair. So I tinkered with a dryer the other day, and Uh, just the way that it was designed makes it incredibly difficult to access one single screw in the back of the damn thing. You need a long handle screwdriver and it's got to have a magnetic tip. And why was it built like that? It was pretty arbitrary. They put stuff in the way on purpose to make it hard to actually work with. You got to move the entire thing. You got to get a flashlight all the way back there, fiddle with it. It's just no good, designed wrong. And these are examples of an antagonism between a marketplace and the long-term sustainability of a product. And this relates to something like leather belts. Let's call it what would be a good product? A jacket. Let's say a good bomber jacket of some sort. So we're talking about cool, maybe slightly cold weather jacket. And if you're in the reduce, reuse, recycle camp, you think of things a little bit differently than somebody who's just vegan. Somebody who's just vegan says it can't be leather, period. It can't be certain animal products. And that would remove leather. However, it turns out that leather is an extremely long wearing, efficient material to use for well everywhere. That's why we use it. And so if I were to make a really nice leather jacket out of it, that leather jacket could last. There are leather jackets that are out there that were actually in service, worn by Air Force in World War II, and they're still in service now. They're still, I mean, not by actual servicemen, but they were given to their kids or whatever, and they're still a daily wearer for people because they were it was made right. And if as a vegan I were to choose against or select against leather, and I would choose some other material, that other material might not last 10 years. And so I'd end up buying another one in 10 years and then another one, as opposed to one thing that would last 45 years. And there's an entire movement around a more complete way of looking at human impact on things, but it's also a convenience and a cost thing called Buy It for Life, BIFL. There's a little community on Reddit, and this is a concept that's out there elsewhere, um, where instead of thinking of the because veganism isn't about human impact on the world. It's about things with pretty brown eyes and not harming, torturing them kind of thing. This philosophy. So it is different, and that's part of why I'm not a vegan is I would rather think of the world a little bit more complete. So a vegan would make choices that would that would avoid things that are buy it for life, which means that they're making choices that are actually impacting the world negatively in other ways. So they might choose to eat more rice, and they might choose to have more cotton goods, both of which waste a hell of a lot of water. And the cotton goods are going to wear out a lot faster. You could have a conversation with these people, and they'd almost certainly agree with things like, "Well, we should be switching to hemp," and etc. Like these are not they're not restricted to these non-meat things. And I like the buy it for life philosophy. I like opening up these ideas so that you can look in terms of when you purchase a product or a service, even think in terms of longevity. And as soon as you start thinking in terms of reduce, reuse, recycle, repair, buy for life type these philosophies, you're thinking in terms of extending the your use for that particular task for that product for as long as possible, making your impact on the world smaller and smaller, at least for that one thing. And if you do that for more and more things, then theoretically speaking, human impact in general would on the world, if that's something anybody really cares about, it will be lower. Technically speaking, I mean, technically, philosophically, um, because humans have intellectual frugality, which I talked about earlier, they're not going to be aware or interested in veganism or the repairing community or buy it for life. They're just not. That's not their thing. Maybe they haven't been aware, haven't been made aware. Maybe they only peripherally care. Maybe it's a convenience thing. Like you shouldn't be buying junk food. You should be making your own food at home. But it's just a lot of people know you can do that. They still don't do it. They might be made aware that it's possible to have some things repaired and just not care. Like um, in a free market, the earth could be completely destroyed piece by piece, but the free market will adapt as soon as as soon as customers say, "Well, I want this instead," the entire market changes. It's totally agnostic to the idea, and as soon as there's resource constraints, the market automatically adapts. There's no need for like an authoritarian government demanding certain changes. Doesn't matter. The the problem is intellectual frugality will have the entirety of the earth consumed to be a ruinous wreck of garbage, and then humans will adapt to living in that wreck of garbage, and all the earth will be like that. And I don't know if, or the nastiest places that have huge open dumps that humans sift through for parts to sell and stuff like that. Did we talk on microphone about the gold salvaging, the toxic waste dump? I think it's in South Africa. Is the one I was thinking of.
No, not that I think. No,
So
never.
one of the complaints that people have, and it's a good complaint, is there are let's say producers in quote unquote the West. So let's say producers in the United States who they're manufacturers and their manufacturing uh, process has garbage, uh, and or the products they sell to American citizens, let's say, eventually produces garbage because it doesn't last for well, it doesn't last forever. Period. And so what happens is maybe those products get collected in a recycling program. Electronics is the one I want to bring up. So let's say electronics, you're supposed to like technically what you do with a piece of electronics is you bring it to a specialized place. And they're like big chain electronic stores that accept random. It's called e-waste, and if for an electronics shop and stuff like that, they'll have relationships for places that companies that will come and collect that waste. But where that waste goes is onto a ship sent to some essentially third world country and is dropped off into essentially open garbage dumps. And this is a free market arrangement and it's approved by that government and by those businesses. This junk, what is waste to us, is purchased. So everything is above board. Everything is legal from one end to the other. I mean, there's processes in place, and you would say this is a good thing. But what ends up happening is you have massive junkyards of this stuff, and this electronic waste is still has value in it. Now, for people that understand repairs for electronics, there's an incredible amount of value in just like I can take two broken things, I can take parts of one and make the other one work. Right. So they both had value. Now, maybe I can take I can make item A work. Item B is now irreparable because it's now missing components and it's got whatever original damage that it had. So I can still use B to maybe fix C and D and E. Like there's still parts in it that might be necessary for other things to repair them. So there's a very significant amount of repairing that can be done with just broken stuff. And so people in electronics in the let's call it the repair hobby know these things. So it's kind of a shame that all this stuff gets shipped off as garbage. And the places that receive this stuff don't pursue any of these repairs. They don't know enough, they don't have the equipment. But generally speaking, it's just because they don't know, which is a real shame. But what they do is there are raw materials that like the earth only has a limited number of pounds uh, of mined materials that are used in certain applications, and every industry has certain physical material requirements. And a lot of that just comes from digging the stuff out of the ground. So stuff like gold, there's a limited amount of gold on Earth. Theoretically, there's more, we've got a big crust, so there's going to be more gold, maybe around, maybe, I don't know. And there's value in ever increasing value in the junk that we produce that uses gold. And gold is one of the things that gets used on in electronics. And it gets used on the little traces between components and things like that because it's a very efficient transmitter of electrons. And because the essentially the friction by transmitting electricity through gold is much lower than it is through, say, copper wiring. And so you get less heat, all this kind of stuff. It's magic stuff. And so these parts in these dumps get subjected to chemicals to extract those components, those raw components again, and those can be sold back to
There
the original companies or someone else.
there was a
And
TV show. You heard of any chance you saw MacGyver back then?
a little, but I can't remember any of it.
So there's a reboot, and they
Oh,
showed a TV show where they went to Africa to recover a hard drive because a senator was being black because I think it was a senator being no. There was sensitive information on one of those hard drives which the guy did not properly dispose of, or they didn't do a destroy on site sort of thing.
mhm.
And you see the process of Africans taking parts. One person's boiling is melting gold. They take the hard drives and scan them for possibly anything to blackmail other people with.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Hmm.
That's so that's the thing is that they'd have to pull apart the hard drives because presumably it would not be working.
They
That's
have
why somebody
setups to scan the hard drives. If they're working, then they do it. If not, then
yeah.
I don't know.
That's actually
They might attempt to pursue it, but
yeah, but I get the idea. That's actually that's a good example of the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Although there's the nefarious aspect. So this cycle that I'm talking about is we producing all free legal mechanisms, but the complaint is that we're actually not only shipping junk to another place, our junk to another place to make it the not our problem thing. They have different labor and pollution laws, and there's actual permanent pollution in the ground in these dump sites, and they're actually the 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 toxicity of the soil itself is carcinogenic and is absolutely guaranteed to cause cancer. Is how bad it is, and there are people that are mucking about in bare feet, going through parts. I mean, because they're poor because this stuff is sent to a poor country because that's the most optimal in a free market. That's the most optimal profitability. So the amorality of that free market is taking advantage of that situation. And so there are people who see a more complete view of the products that we consume and understand that life cycle and want to understand the recycling or the waste management of the things they buy as well. So there's a fine argument for the longevity understanding, so the buy it for life, and then knowing what happens when you throw it away. So I might be able to buy a leather jacket, wear it for my literally the rest of my life. Like I can buy a nice leather jacket for something that might be a little bit big for like a 16-year-old and have them, you know, have children grow up, be grandparents and die at a ripe old age, and they could be buried in that jacket. It would be perfect. I mean, it wouldn't even get holes in it unless they're a cyclist that gets into an accident and it won't even be scraped. And as opposed to multiple generations of clothing now, and it could be buried and it could be decomposed in however much time or whatever, as opposed to the artificial fluff that's put in jackets now that won't really decompose, the whatever other plastics, et cetera, that aren't really they're not recyclable, or they're not like not that people really clip things apart to recycle components for they just casually throw away the entire thing. It's not like there's a special um, jacket recycling facility in every town. Um, so just like thinking about GMOs, most people don't even think about garbage or the life cycle of their products. They certainly don't think about things like the politics or labor laws involved in stuff. And um, so it would be unethical because it would be against our labor laws to purchase any goods that are the result of that country's labor laws. That should be the general philosophy that we have is not just citizens putting pressure, political pressure to have our industries regulated in certain ways, but to also to regulate all the way through our industries internationally so that we don't do business with certain other places that are bad. This is one of the reasons why countries will hemorrhage their businesses. That will move their factories to other countries that have lax labor laws or pollution laws. Those are the big ones, but also tax laws and whatever other weird legal things. Um, I just find it kind of a shame that um, everyday everyday people are so intellectually frugal, and that there's nothing even prompting people who should be interested. Like a person who is a vegan for philosophical reasons has the capacity in them to have a philosophy dictate their choices, dictate their not just diet choices, that because that's just vegetarianism, but to inform their purchasing in general. Um, that person has the capacity to be like that, but they maybe haven't considered, or they haven't had the time to extend their interest out into products a little bit further, which I find to be an incredible shame. Um, and the notion that there might be shaming of a person that makes ideological purchases. Like now, I'm sure there are going to be people that are being shamed in the United States, particularly. I'm thinking if they say they will only buy made in America, if they have the choice, they'll only buy made in America. There are people who are so ideologically disturbed that they'll think that's racist. I'm like, what? Or they'll think, oh my God, that is Republican. That is bad. That's for you can't be pro America. That would be it's like that's that's ex- that's what you have control over in the world as a consumer, as a shopper. If you can insist on buying products, and you can insist on those products being tied as closely to the your voting as possible, so you can control what the labor is like, what the environmental impact is like. I really hope one day people consider garbage more and consider recycling more and consider the international chain of not just garbage, but resource acquisition or component acquisition. So I'm sure there's shaming for people developing a more rounded philosophy that grounds it in the only way you can ground a consumerist philosophy is in nationalism, because that's the only thing you have a vote for. The only other thing you can do is build your own business and insist on it that way. But your competitors are going to just bury you if you start a business with ethics in mind. Business in general doesn't is amoral. It doesn't understand morality. It in fact, corporations are. I don't know if this is universal because I can't. I was never the type that went to understanding the mechanics of that part of business. But corporations, there are corporations that have a so say it's a public corporation that sells stocks online. There are corporations which have in their constitution essentially the promise to their stockholders that they will that they will make a profit, and that's their entire drive. So they'll actually do nefarious, nasty things for a profit, and that will automatically outcompete an ethical company unless that ethical company can.
Dominate the
Um,
market somehow, but they won't. But they can't.
well, often the quote unquote ethical companies, the advantage they have is playing the world's smallest violin with their ethical topic, and and then convincing the shoppers to buy from them for that ethical reason, and hope that they can outcompete the quote unquote unethical, probably literally unethical competition they have. So if I made in America Incorporated and it was a competitor to Walmart, first good luck with that. But imagine I did that. I could I could made in America like really hard, and there would be a massive, very um, dedicated shopper base for that, and the products would be double the price. I personally, I'd buy if it was. I mean, I'd buy Canada, but I would also accept America, and I would pay more because um, ass- assuming they also had more of a buy it for life philosophy going on, I would certainly pay double. I bought new socks. I ended up returning them because they were a bit too tight. I might buy them again, but they're a little thick, and I don't like the fact that they have a big fat logo like right on the toes. From I can't remember the name of the company, but they're buy it for life socks. They might not last your entire lifetime, but they have a lifetime warranty. You can just replace them. But people are like 10 years and they're fine, stuff like that. And there's socks that cost, I'm not joking, $20 per sock. And on the one hand, you it's a fair argument to say, well, why not buy 20 pairs of socks? And okay, so they only last 1 year apiece, but whatever. I mean, it's X amount of dollars over X amount of time. But again, that's an incomplete philosophy that doesn't understand a longer term impact. Those shitty socks, they only last so long. And you're not wearing 100% out. You're just wearing a hole in the sock in the bottom somewhere. You're not stitching it up. So you're not doing a repair. You're not using it as a rag for something else. You're throwing it away instantly. And so it only serves that lifespan, and that's a short lifespan. And it was how much cotton, which had to be grown, how much water had to be wasted, shipping from another country to get to you. That even though it's X volume, X weight, so it only took X fuel, it was whatever. And the labor laws are different over there, and whatever supply chain and environmental impact over there. Right. So there are problems. And it only lasts 1 year, and you have to get another one, and then you have to get another one, and then you have to get another one. And maybe you just buy 20 up front, so it's not inconvenient that way, but it's 20 times the garbage, and it's out of the control of locally. But if you buy local and you pay 20 times, so that's kind of extreme, but you pay 2 times, 3 times the price. If you buy more local, there's more control over the politics of it, so the environmental, the business, the labor laws, the garbage laws. There's less transport. It lasts for longer. It produces less garbage, and so there are arguments for paying more money because you're actually paying less money over the long run, and you're being less abusive to, let's call it, the Gaia worship. You're being less impactful on the world, whatever that means. But you're having more of your ethical concerns actually controlling the politics because it's all local. You don't control the labor laws of Malaysia or Indonesia or whatever, wherever you get your cheap labor from. Like, you don't control the factories in Mexico. You can, kinda, depending on how things work, but it's not like you can control the politics of you as a consumer, right? Can vote and control the politics of Mexico, but you can at least do it at least as effectively as you can in your local environment, your city, state, province, or country. That's kind of doable.
Your
So
local area, relative
yeah,
local area.
yeah, buying local is a thing that I'm really I don't it's something that I always want to talk about because the notion, other than these notions of labor laws and environmental laws, the idea that you could get something shipped and get it shipped up from another country. How is that getting shipped up? Um, that's put on a shipping vessel of some sort, waterborne. Maybe it's getting transferred to train. Maybe it's getting put on trucks. I know in the United States, trucks are a massive means of pushing stuff around, and
Transportation.
it's an hmm?
Transportation.
Well, just for goods.
Like when you say pushing stuff around.
Well, transporting, fine. You and your technical wording, your wordsmithing,
I mean, who says pushing things around?
but whatever. Um, so, and people purchasing stuff, they never keep in mind how far that thing had to travel to get to them. So, like, again, I'm gonna just beat on vegans because they've got an actual food philosophy. Vegetarians don't always, but they're like frutarians. They only eat fruit. Good way to die young. You should see the deconversion videos on YouTube for like, I used to be a fruitarian. I almost died. 15 minutes of them talking about what a bad idea it was. I love seeing stuff like that. And I just want to laugh when somebody has a an aggressive philosophy that they do the entire holier than thou and make a lineage of videos all talking about how great it was, and then end it all with a oh I was so wrong. Um, but you talk to you listen to like a fruitarian, it's a specialized vegetarian, and they're really big on bananas. And like again, it's such an incomplete philosophy. In that case, it's a personal diet philosophy. It's not like a worldview philosophy, but their philosophy doesn't have a worldview of localism. So they'll eat bananas grown in another country that's shipped by vessel of some sort to get to them, like a good quarter, a third of the way around the world, wherever they happen to be, maybe further. The amount of the incorrectness of the labor laws, the pollution from the transportation, and it's not even just the diesel that a boat would burn, but the fact that that boat had to be assembled in the first place to ship goods, and they're contributing to the need for those things.
And then whatever,
Um,
then whatever outputted that stuff.
well, so it's like the mining has to happen, and then the shipping for the mining. All the people have to be involved in it, and then the plant has to exist for all the parts, and then the assembling has to happen for the boats, and the boat has to be maintained and fueled for products, and they're contributing to that impact, as opposed to not being a fruitarian, but trying to buy at least in their own country, so they can control the labor laws and the environmental laws, and buying as locally as possible or growing their own, right? Which is not as easy as it sounds, certainly. And it is actually not feasible for individuals to grow all of their own food or even most of their own food, and probably not even some of their own food. But you can you can do some simple stuff. And that would be a beautiful dream.
Oh, so
Like
you can't
stop.
just grow a banana plants or
Well,
tree?
no, I mean, I'm sure there are some potheads who know how to do that kind of stuff. Who are like, yeah, sure. First, what you do is you cut a hole in your first floor down to your basement, if you've
I
got
said banana.
banana, and you'd be like, then they'd seal up all the windows, and they'd hotbox the entirety of their
Wait a second,
house.
it's legal here. Is it? Why do they need to
It's
do all
legal.
that?
Well, no, 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 no. We're talking about banana plants,
Well, why
right?
would you need to hotbox it?
No, no, because you need to maintain a climate in your house, and Canada kind of gets cold sometimes. I don't know if you know.
Oh, right. God damn it.
I mean, there are places where it just gets cold at night, not even just in winter.
All year
Right,
round. Yeah, 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 I see.
right. Right. So, so you got your apartment in downtown Toronto, and you have to have the height. So you cut a hole in one of the floors, and theoretically speaking, you could grow bananas locally, but none, you're
Wait, aren't they seasonal?
bananas. All
Aren't
all
all fruit?
plants are seasonal.
Then it doesn't matter.
But you still need to hotbox your house.
No, for
You
what?
you would need to climate control your house because you're not going to have. So maybe you can GMO yourself some hardy bananas that'll grow locally, but it's unlikely. Um, I mean, maybe that's why we don't have bananas locally. Because oh, what am I kidding? I know of an American that actually has a banana tree. Huh. So yeah, I guess you could grow it in some places,
Jeez.
but I mean, it wouldn't be as optimal as the place where the damn thing was originally discovered, I guess we can say, as well.
Discovered, I mean, at this point, the genetics have been spliced so
Well,
many times, played with
it was
so many
originally
times.
discovered, and then we're just like, oh, plant these better ones. Just keep going. Um, yeah, have you seen? You've seen what bananas used to kind of look like, or what we think
Nope,
they look like?
I don't want
Nasty
to.
things. The stuff that humans had to eat before we invented chicken nuggets.
Do you mean before technology got better? Or science and technology got better?
Well, yeah, before we started sciencing everything. Um, did you know the other day I learned that there are for chicken McNuggets from McDonald's, which I know that there are people that are going to be cringing listening to this, like, oh my god, it's not real food. You're right, it's not real food.
What was it?
But they actually have shapes. They actually have known shapes, four different shapes that are used for chicken McNuggets from
Yes.
McDonald's, and they actually have names. These four different shapes, and it's like, of course, like I'm not surprised there are knowable shapes so that they can have molds for those four shapes. I'm not surprised, and they're just awkward enough shapes that you might not notice them when you're eating them. You have them in your little I guess supposedly recyclable paper thing that you throw it anyway. Um, and it needs to all look like individual things so that they look like they're kind of real, like they're natural, not like they're mold formed little hunks of crap. And they're shaped in such a way, supposedly, that they're with optimal dippability in mind. So they're one is a boot shape, and one is a, and so that there would be certain surfaces that would look good, feel good when you're dipping. It's like, yeah, I'm not surprised that's a thing. That's I don't want to I don't go to McDonald's often enough to really care.
I feel like
I don't know
McDonald's
the
for
last
some
time.
reason.
Sorry?
I feel like McDonald's for some reason.
Yeah, now I do. Um, so I'm not surprised. That's kind of cute that they have names. It's like what was it? The different shapes for Tetris also have names. It's like, why? Why? Okay. I'm not surprised because humans name everything. So I think we're coming up on another break, are we not? Are you there?
Yeah. We have like 30 seconds for another break to kick in.
Yes, I'll start on another completely
And it seems like
weird.
a good time to be on break.
Okay.
And we're paused.